Okay, Jules, do you want to tell us a bit about how you first got into playing FPL?
I got into playing FPL through an old job of mine where basically everyone in the office was all playing. So everyone decided to join a league, and that's kind of where it all began. But if I'm being completely honest, I didn't really take it very seriously and just played just for a laugh really here and there. And obviously that is still how it is now, but seeing as I now work on the FPL show, I feel like I have to take it a bit more seriously. So I would say that I've been playing and paying more attention to it more seriously probably for about 6 years since I started doing the FPL show. So yeah, it's such good fun, and it's kind of weird to think about not playing FPL now.
It does definitely becomes part of your life, doesn't it? That you kind of, once you're hooked into it, then it's like every week deadlines are kind of so important. And Kelly, is yours similar? Because obviously doing what you do with the FPL podcast, was it a similar way into the game?
Yeah, so before presenting, I worked at AFC Bournemouth, and then when they got into the Premier League, everyone, it was so exciting because Bournemouth had never been in the Premier League, everyone started playing it. And so it was like just within our office, and then as soon as you start playing it, you realise how many other people play it. So it enables you to kind of join leagues with people that you, like people that I didn't even know as well, like I'd lost contact with, and I joined loads of leagues. And then on in, because of the competition, you kind of just do it again every season. But it's so exciting, and you want to win that league, and yeah, you get addicted, don't you? So yeah, it was similar to Jules really, being in an office, doing it with your mates, and then it's just continued from there. I'm still in some of the same leagues that I was in when I first started. I think as well, it was about 6 or 7 years ago for me when I started playing it really seriously as well.
Anita?
Yeah, so I started working with Arsenal a few seasons ago, and I remember on match days, specifically on Saturdays, so before the deadline, when we had to be in earlier, I'd hear some of the guys talking about who they were captaining. And at first, I wasn't really interested because they weren't talking about Arsenal players. And then when they started mentioning some of our players, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is something I can get into. I got into it kind of mid-season, so I had an awful time. I don't know what my ranking was, like 2 million, 3 million, I don't even want to remember. But then the following season I started working at the BBC, and there everyone took it seriously, so by force I had to learn what was going on. And so quickly my knowledge and addiction, like Kelly said, grew through the roof, and that competitive spirit just came through. And yeah, a couple of seasons down the line, I'm now here working on it, and I'm like breathing and dreaming about FPL.
It's definitely hard. I know that, you know, with my, I shouldn't really say this to you now, but with my Spurs loyalties, it's definitely hard to not get too involved in owning those assets, and you kind of have to train yourself out of the habit of being like, oh, I don't want to own that player, I don't want to own this one.
Definitely.
Olivia, what about you?
Yeah, I similarly to Jules, when I first started, I was one of those FPL players that would play until Christmas and then absolutely give up. Like my team would be rubbish until, like I would be doing all right up until Christmas, and then I just absolutely lose it, and then I just wouldn't even make transfers. Like I wouldn't even play the rest of the time. Whereas obviously I started at PLP. This is my 5th season, so my first season I was playing it, but again wasn't really too fast. And then my second season at PLP, we made like a league within our department. And then it's just a competitive edge. And then my family start playing it. And my dad, honestly, is the worst person for playing FPL. He is obsessed. And now my main aim is just to beat him. He doesn't call me anymore to talk about, like, you know, how I am. He calls me to talk about who I'm captaining. Like he is, honestly, his life revolves around FPL. And I think similarly to all of us, we're all sitting there making decisions on a Friday night about who we're going to captain and what transfers we're going to do. But yeah, I'd say these last few years, especially obviously now working on it and being labelled as an expert, I feel like you have to have a responsibility to actually have a good team. And when people ask you about it, you've got to, like, you know, come up with answers, even though sometimes I don't have those answers myself. But yeah, I'd say the last few years is when I've properly taken it seriously and gone the whole way through the season.
So I know for me, when we started the FPL family, it was a little bit of a hobby that then spiraled into something that you kind of become completely addicted to, and you're so passionate about it that it's something that you just want everyone to play. And it's something that I know that my friends and family in particular are always kind of texting me and saying, well, what should I do about this, or why did you make that choice, or in Jules's case, why did you tell me to captain Salah over Bruno Fernandes? And you kind of get yourself into the cycle where it does take over. And I guess I want to know, why is it that it's become such a passion for you? Because it's not only just something that you love doing, it's also your job. So it's kind of taking over everything, I suppose. Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, it completely takes over my life. Like Kelly says, I think you have so many different people that you know are in so many different leagues, and I'm the most competitive person. Like, I hate losing, and so like when you go up against friends and family, you know, my family league is possibly the most competitive, and I'm passionate about it because I want to beat them. Like, I want to beat most of the people in that group, and at the same time, like, I'm in so many like WhatsApp chats when all everyone talks about is fantasy, and like me and Anita are in one with our bosses, and it's just 24/7 fantasy. And if someone scores, it's like, if someone's got them in a team, it's straight in the chat. And I think I love it. Do you know what? I don't even the passion around it, and it causes me so much stress. I think the stress overdoes the joy, because like the decisions that I have to make, especially when we were talking having a strong squad, stuff like that really gets to me. But I love playing it. I love how sort of it brings everyone together as well. And it's something that everyone can play. Like, my little sister's not a huge fan of football. She is slowly getting into it. But this year she decided to play, because you don't have to know football really to play Fantasy Premier League. You know, I'll help her, and other people will help her as well. But it's just kind of a fun way to get everyone involved, and you can also learn a lot about the game, and it encourages you to watch the game. So I think that's why, you know, I love it so much, and you know, I can't see myself stopping playing it ever.
Anita, what about you?
Yeah, I know you're part of the FPL family, but I feel like there's a wider FPL family. And during these challenging times when we're all stuck indoors, I think it just brings some light, obviously stress as well, because you're making big decisions, but I just think it's such even more of a distraction than usual, because we're all focused on what managers are saying in their press conferences. We're focused on midweek games. We've been so spoilt with how many games. So I think my passion definitely has grown even more, because it's something that brings me joy during these challenging times. Also, I love how global in reach it is. Like, you tweet about it and I have people from India responding to me, Nigeria, like I'm half Nigerian, I love it. Like, that community, they come and they're talking to me about it. They could be questioning my decisions, but I love the banter, it's amazing. And there's just no barriers, it's open to everyone. And I think Olivia touched on this, it doesn't matter your level or your knowledge of the game, it's so accessible and it's literally just at our fingertips. And if you watch the games, it's like, why wouldn't you play? It's like you literally have that power at your fingertips, and I love it. And I also love the competitive side of it. I love beating everyone or trying to beat everyone. So yeah, I'd say that's why I'm so passionate about it.
I definitely think that this season, with all the games being televised all the time and being, for the most part, stuck at home, like, football is definitely an escapism, isn't it? And knowing that there's something else riding on those games that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily watch. You know, I'll sit there and watch the Spurs games, of course, and Liverpool with the other half, but there's other games that I wouldn't normally watch, and yet we'll find ourselves sat there kind of arguing about who's got who in their FPL team, because we're kind of so involved and invested in it.
Sam, this is the problem with FPL, is that I'm a Chelsea fan, like you're a Spurs fan. We sit there wanting Son to return, and I shouldn't ever want Son to return as a Chelsea fan, but you find yourself supporting, and that's everything that's wrong with FPL, is that you pick a captain of a rival team and suddenly you want them to do well, and it's like, no, that shouldn't happen, but that's what it does to you.
And it's and I guess that's kind of part of the fun of it, isn't it? And I'll sit there and I'll think, you know, sorry, Anita, oh, I really hope Arsenal lose, but if this guy could get a brace before they do it, that would be really handy. And I think it does, it becomes so ingrained in your kind of person and who you are, that you spend your whole life thinking, I really don't, you know, from a Spurs point of view, I'd like this to happen tonight, but actually with my FPL team, I'd really quite like this to happen instead. Kelly, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just become part of my life. The irony of it is I don't directly work on FPL as often as I used to. I don't do the updates, and I only do the show when Jules isn't around. But I've got back involved in the podcast, and even though I don't work on it as regularly, it's almost like now I got to a level on it and I want to get better and better and better, even more addicted. I think as well, my other half's got really, really into it as well. And particularly in the midweek games, we find ourselves like flicking between the games to try and watch our various FPL assets, which is quite sad really. But it's like the Liverpool-Brighton game the other day, Max was like, we can't turn it off because Mo Salah might score. Obviously, alas, that didn't happen. And I was like, but I want to see how Jack Grealish is doing in the other game. So it kind of, yeah, I love that about it. I love that, like you said, it does give an extra interest. And like the WhatsApp groups I'm still in a group, as I said, with people when I worked at Bournemouth. I think that's what's good about it. It keeps you in touch with other people. And it's kind of what you guys said as well. It brings another element to the games and just makes Premier League football even more exciting than it already is, I think.
And I guess for you, Jules, given that you are at least once a week forced to talk about FPL as part of your job, but I know from following you on social that it isn't just part of your job, like it is something that you genuinely do love as well.
Oh yeah, I'm actually obsessed with it. So it sometimes annoys me how obsessive I get over it. But I think that just shows the kind of real passion with when you play FPL and you play it regularly, you can't not become obsessed with it, because if you are competitive, and like Liv said, I'm so competitive, it frustrates me so much when I don't win, or if I don't get the highest score, or if I'm not beating a particular person, and usually that changes. So like, as all of us are, we're in so many different mini leagues, and there are some leagues that become the ones you really want to win, and there are some that you're sort of like, oh, okay, I don't really mind if I'm not top of that one or whatever, and then they become like different people each season that you want to beat because of whatever reason. You might have, just a little rivalry with that person for whatever reason. So I think the main passion for me just comes out of genuinely wanting to win. And I don't mean like win overall, because that's never going to happen. I mean just winning those mini little battles with your mates. And yeah, similar to everyone else, I've got a mini league with my family as well, and my dad is just the most obsessive person with it. And like Liv was saying, he just genuinely just messages me now and asks me fantasy questions. I'm like, Dad, like I haven't spoken to you for 3 days. Do you want to ask how I am? But yeah, so it just becomes really competitive, and I think that's where the main passion is. But it's also a conversation starter. Like if you know someone plays FPL, it's such an easy thing to sort of talk to people about, and everyone that plays it has this sort of same excitement when you bring it up, of the same feelings and emotions that you've all experienced in that game week when a player blanks, or if a player's been benched, or if your captain delivers, and you've all kind of gone through that same thing. So it gives you this sort of united thing to talk about, which I think is one of the real joys about it. But then also, as you say, Sam, hosting the FPL show does bring a little bit of pressure. I mean, I don't really see it as like pressure to be good, but at the same time, I don't want to be bad, because then it's really embarrassing. So there is a little bit more of a passion to it, because I know I invest a lot of my time into it, and if I'm really bad, people will be like, why on earth are you hosting this show? So yeah, but luckily I've never been dreadful. I've had some really bad calls, as we all do, but I'm usually doing okay, because I think as long as you invest enough of your time into it, you can't ever be really bad unless you just get such hard luck, which has happened to us all in FPL. But yeah, so I'd say like the main passion of it is the competitiveness, the fact it brings everyone together as something fun to talk about, and then yeah, working on it as well definitely helps.